Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. For today's tutorial, I'm really excited to show you this. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. I did a snakeskin stencil with an airbrush. I did some draping pearls, and I also did some flowers that were made with wafer paper and floral wire. But first thing we're going to do is, actually I got this a little backwards. The first thing I did do was the flowers, but that's not how I edited it. But just if you're going to do this, I would recommend making the flowers first so that they can set up. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. But to make these draping cascading pearls, I'm just using a variety of different molds, silicone molds that I have. I'm showing you how I'm making these larger ones, but I did make some different sized ones and different shaped ones. But it's the same technique. So basically you just dust your mold with some cornstarch, roll your fondant into a log. I did not add Tylose this time because I didn't need it to set up real firm. And then just place your rolled up logs of fondant into your mold. Make sure that they're not too thick so you don't have as much to remove. And then I rolled it into place, pressed it down, removed the excess. And to get them out of the molds, I like to squeeze the molds in towards the center. And that kind of forms the sides of the pearls a little bit better. And then just kind of roll the top edge back, and they just kind of fall out. Hopefully. That's the plan anyways. And since these are going to sit for a little bit while I'm making my other ones, I just kind of line them up with my fondant smoothers just so that they keep their straight shape. But now I'm going to go ahead and make the snakeskin panel. I'm doing the paneling method, my preferred method of putting fondant on a cake. And I just rolled it out to about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch thickness. I measured the circumference of the cake and the height. So I am cutting this to the size. Add about 1 inch to each dimension, 1 inch to the height and 1 inch to the width, so that you have a little extra to work with. I've just put a little, brushing on a little shortening on the back of the stencil. This is a good way so that you don't have overspray with your stenciling. A good way to prevent that from happening a little bit more. And then I just kind of pressed it onto the fondant, covered up the rest of the fondant with a little bit of saran wrap. There was a little bit of overspray, but I just kind of removed that with some Everclear after everything had dried. Well, that's not exactly true. I go back and I clean the lines up after I have the whole thing done, but I did kind of wipe down the overspray right away with some Everclear before I did the next panel or the next section of the stencil. I wish they made these stencils longer. That would make my life a lot easier. Anyway, I just used some royal blue airbrush color is all this is. I'm using my airbrush. I've only ever used it on cakes. You can find airbrushes on Amazon. I do have some cordless ones, and I do have some that need to be plugged in. Either one works fine. And then I just removed the stencil right away. And you can see where there was a little bit of overspray there. I'm just dabbed my little paper towel into some Everclear to try to remove as much of that as possible. But don't worry too much about it, because this pattern is so busy that you're not really going to notice it. But if you do notice it, once you've got your second and any remaining panels or sections of stencil that you need to line up, if you do notice it still, you can go in with a Q-tip and dip that into the Everclear also and kind of remove the airbrush color that way. It does remove a little bit easier once it has dried. Now on the second piece, I tried to kind of block. You can see there's a plastic scraper on the left-hand side there, trying to block the last little section of fondant. And then I used my metal scraper, kind of holding it up against the end of the stencil to block it from going to where I already airbrushed. Now I'm just kind of being cautious and trying to make sure that I'm not doing too broad of a spray with it. I kind of have it narrowed down into more of a centralized spray, if you know what I'm saying. You turn the tip of it so it makes it either a wider spray or a more detailed spray. and I'm using it more towards the detailed end, which means I do have to go back over it quite a few times because you can kind of see where I've been. But to get a more even coverage, you have to kind of go back over it a lot. But that way I can kind of control a little bit more where it's going. So I did the same thing for the very end also. I did kind of let it dry a little bit in between, maybe 15 minutes in between. The previous panels, I keep saying panels, the previous sections were still a little bit wet, but you know, we don't have all day. And then I showed you too at the end there where I just used a thinner brush with the airbrush color, the same airbrush color. And I just kind of made where there was a gap in between the sections, kind of painted an artificial, just kind of brought it all together so that there weren't gaps as much. Then I brushed my already buttercreamed cake with some shortening, and I flipped it upside down actually to attach that. I don't know if you caught that. I kind of put a piece of acetate on the front of it with a little bit of shortening on it. This is dry at that point. And then I flipped it over it so that I could more easily use the acetate sheet to bring the panel up to the cake. Wrapped it around and gently, gingerly touched the fondant on to the buttercream because you don't want air bubbles, but I also didn't want to smudge the color. So I put that in the refrigerator to set up. Now I'm making my wafer paper petals. I just cut pieces of 0 grade wafer paper into the shape of random petals. Actually, I used the cutter, but you could just do it more random if you want. The cutter is just kind of a little bit of a cheat so that they're all similar in size, in shape. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. But I glued together 2 pieces. I just used some wafer paper glue, which is just wafer paper melted down into water. 30 seconds in the microwave should do it. And I just kind of brushed that on the petals, put the wire in between them, and then kind of sandwiched the pieces together. And then I just used the same airbrush color, and I think I just used a paper towel. I just missed it, and I just did it last week. Anyway, you can use a sponge or a piece of paper towel and just kind of sponge it on there on just the inner corner. And then the other wires, these are so easy. I'm using the same cutter, and I'm just kind of bending my wire around them. These were brown to begin with, and then I'm just brushing the airbrush color on it. They did kind of look more on the black end instead of navy, but I think that still worked better with the color scheme than the brown would have. I'm kind of letting those dry, and then I brought my cake back out of the refrigerator, and I'm cutting off that extra piece. I did not put a piece on the top of the cake since it's doing white fondant on white buttercream. I didn't think that it was going to matter too much. Sometimes I don't think you have to do a piece on the top. I think it's just fine. Then I put my straws in, and I used a little buttercream to attach the 2 tiers together. That top tier had been frosted already, and it was in the freezer for about 10 minutes so that I could more easily just pick it up and transfer it on the cake. And since as it's coming to room temperature, it will have a little bit of condensation on the top tier, I don't have to worry too much about adding any water to the back of my pearls to get them to stick. A little shortcut there. Condensation sometimes can be our friend. Not always, but sometimes can. And I'm just randomly placing them. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's about 3 to 4 different sizes and shapes of these pearls. And I just wanted them kind of just cascading down haphazardly. So I am lining them up, not the same shapes and sizes exactly that, duplicates next to each other. I'm kind of spacing them out, draping them down onto the bottom tier. There you might need to add a little bit of water but be careful because you don't want your airbrush color to get smudged. But if you do things the way I do them, I chill my tiers in between working on them when I'm working on another tier. So for me, a little bit of condensation happened on the bottom tier also. Not enough to ruin the airbrush, but just enough so I didn't have to worry about adding any more water to the back of the pearls. Put that into the refrigerator while I am making my flowers. And all I'm doing, I have 3 of each kind of petal. No, I'm sorry. 3 of the wafer paper petals Then I did 5 of the floral wire ones. 3 of the regular size, and then I did make 2 for each one of them that were a little bit smaller to put towards the front. So you have a little variation of size there, and it makes it look a little bit more complete, I guess is the best way to put it. So I just am arranging them together and then wrapping some floral wire or floral tape, around them. I wish I had brown floral tape. I thought I did, but I couldn't find it, so I just went ahead and used the green. And also I had bought some white, but it didn't come. That would have probably looked bad with the wire. Never mind. It's a good thing I didn't use the white. So I just went ahead and used the green, knowing that they were going to basically be stuck into the cake. So there's the 3 that I have. And since they're covered with the floral tape, to me, that makes them food safe. I know different people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Everybody has an opinion. Let's not be jerks about it, right? In general, I don't tend to have that problem. But put a straw into the cake first if that bothers you, and then insert your flour into your straw. That's a good way to double safe with the food safe issue. So sorry about the back of my head there. I just placed the 3 of them. Because of the size of them, they took up some space. I didn't think I needed to do any more than 3. So here's our final product. I hope you like this one as much as I enjoyed doing it. I thought it was just different enough to make it really special. And the flowers add a different touch to it also. So I hope you liked it. Hope you got something from it. And we'll catch you on the next one.